First take.
This is First Take. We're here with episode 11.
Yep. Nice.
Episode 11, we
You know,
got.
you mentioned before. Do you mention last episode 10? You graduated in 2010.
I
Do you say
did.
something? Well, hey, I graduated in 2011, and here was our slogan. We were so
There you
good,
go.
we had number one twice. Then
That's not the worst slogan I've ever heard.
you're very kind.
Contrary to
But
popular belief.
yeah, I don't know. I don't remember who. I might. If I really dig, doesn't matter who came up with the senior T-shirts. But I wore a shirt that on the back of it it said, "So good, we got number one twice." I wore that around my hometown. Okay, so yeah.
Our shirt said something like Dub 10. It was like
Oh,
Dub
really?
10,
Wow.
like
Yeah. Well, hey.
2010, like Dub 10 or something. So,
Yeah, I don't even see the kids at my. Did you guys do this? They had seniors. It was SEN 10.
oh, yeah, yeah.
ORS? Okay. I wonder if that was just like across the board. We'd almost have to like survey the nation. Did your high school do this? Just
There was a kid in my class that misspelled seniors on his
Oh
sign.
right, yeah, yeah.
The senior parade, we'd all paint seniors on our cars. We like decorate our cars and like drive them through the
Hmm.
parade. And he put SENORS on his car. Senior. He wrote seniors all over his car.
Hey, look, representation, you know?
But the 1-0 was part of it, man. How could
Yeah.
you
Oh,
miss that?
really?
How
Oh,
could you
right. Yeah,
miss
that's
that?
right. That's right. Yeah. He
How
was like,
could
that
you
was just
miss
for
that?
fluff, right? We were just throwing the one in there for fluff. I'm spelling the word. Yeah.
He still graduated. God bless him.
Yeah. Hey,
South
another,
Carolina's
a
finest.
statistic. Right. Right.
I mean, to give you people an idea, a peacock got loose at my funeral. And well, a peacock got
You
loose at
know?
my
Yeah.
graduation. At my graduation.
Yeah. Peacock got loose. That's something. Yeah.
Yeah, my a peacock got loose at my graduation just to give everyone an idea of where I'm coming from. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Nothing out of the ordinary happened at my funeral. It was pretty.
mm, mm,
I was just laid to rest. No.
yeah.
But no,
They
yeah,
buried the
my
peacock with
my
me.
graduation was like no one did anything fun or stupid. Like we just got in there, got it done, went
Okay.
about our went our own ways.
You guys go to senior week?
In Ohio, we didn't quite have senior week like you did. I mean, we partied all that week, but we didn't like go to Myrtle Beach or go to, do anything like that. I know a lot of
Mm,
kids in South Carolina do that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, go to the beach, but you know, I guess we could have gone to Nickel Plate up on Lake Erie, but I don't know. You don't always want to swim in that water.
Well, I remember I had like orientation like that within a couple days.
Mm,
So I
mm.
graduated, had orientation, and then I went to my senior week was a bit truncated.
Oh, orientation for Francis Marion?
Yeah,
Can't remember.
it was like
I
soon
remember that was
after
separate.
it was like soon after graduation. I could be misremembering, but I think I'm right.
Yeah, I remember my freshman orientation. That was a good time.
I barely can remember it. I think it was
Yeah,
a good time. It was in
yeah. I
the
don't,
grill, wasn't it? Wasn't it in the grill?
didn't we do something in the UC though? Like there's some kind of like UC thing, and then I don't remember like the extent of it. We like stayed the night.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
Yeah, we
right.
like stayed the night. It was like a weekend or something like that. And, like the parents had their things. We had some like things to tell us like what to expect, and like right? They showed us like yeah, we like ate in the calf
I
and
can't
stuff, and
I can't remember. I'm gonna be honest.
right.
My memory's over, but I can't remember all
Yeah.
that.
I remember there's like something with like karaoke. I like skipped out on
My
it though.
parents were for sure not there. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest.
My
My
mom went. I that's what I
mm,
remember.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
My
my mom
parents were
went.
for sure not there. If it was like a parent thing, that's why I was like, I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
parents being there.
Yeah, I mean, because
My parents didn't go to
going all the way
anything
from
after like 10th grade. They were like, all right, you're
mm, mm. They're like, all right, you got this.
good. after my 10th grade year, they were like, "All right, you can do whatever. I
Do I need to be there?
don't care." So yeah, man, my loving family. All right.
Yeah.
So
Well, hey, I mean, talk about loving families. This week
right.
we're our poet's Louise Glick. So
Yeah. And we
yeah.
love her. She's and
Right.
and and I'm hearing people heap praises on this poet. This
Right,
is
right.
this is one
Yeah.
of the most sort of well spoken about poets I've
Yeah.
ever heard of. I mean,
So much
because
so, I mean, just for those of you at home, we delayed this a couple days. We were gonna do it a couple days ago,
right,
and but wanted to just get our ducks in a row because
yes, yes,
because of
yes,
that, you know.
yes, because of the sheer magnitude of this author, and I mean that in more ways than one. Like she this is an author that has been people are attributing her to almost transcending the page, and
Hmm.
I don't say that lightly.
Yeah,
People are
yeah,
using that level
right.
of language.
Yeah. And if you've been watching, or if this is your first time, and likely that it is if you're watching, you know, we'll go ahead and say, James and I, we're not scholars. We
Mm.
don't, we're not educators here. Um, we haven't read everything in the world. We are learning, and this is a journey we're going on. So, you, know I know more about Louise Gluck today than I did 2 weeks ago, which I
Mm.
knew next to nothing. And I bought a book from her just on a whim because I saw her name a bunch of times. I just knew the name, saw that it won a Pulitzer, the Wild Iris, and I just said, hey, give it a shot. And I didn't even, and it took me a couple months to even read it. And James, I don't, how much did you know about Louise Gluck before this?
I knew next to nothing. Like I said, just the name that I had just seen. You
Hmm.
know, I think at one point in time we were like looking at maybe like the people that had won Pulitzers like
Hmm.
throughout the
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
So I just remember her name being among a list of other Pulitzer
Hmm.
Prize
Hmm.
winners.
Yeah,
Um, and I was probably mispronouncing her name at the
right.
time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I knew next to nothing about Louise Glick
I
to
was
sort
I
of
was calling her
equate.
Gluck. I called her
Oh, see,
Gluck
I thought I
for
said
for
Gluck.
yeah.
Not quite sure how that umlaut was pronounced, but I know it's Glick
Right,
now. And
right.
yeah, definitely have been enjoyed reading her poetry. It's I can appreciate how she incorporates a lot of allusions to sort of mythology.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm a big fan of mythology. Also a big fan of even religion. The sort of
Hmm.
contemporary religions, and she definitely makes allusions to those. And
Right.
no, I haven't come across any direct allusions to sort of Buddhism proper, but I would say that Louise Glick is an artist who kind of understands that, the old Buddhist adage, life is suffering.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I read a great suffering in a lot of her work.
Yeah, I mean, the wild iris especially. I mean, grief is a like a key not only to the poem that I did today, but is throughout the book. It's talking about grief and um, from my understanding, like a lot of her poetry, deals with kind of subjects that are like divorce and death and um, kind of dark subject matter oftentimes. And she has a really I've learned struck by almost immediately she has a very unique voice and a very kind of uh, sort of powerful voice, sort of unmistakable, and um it's not one of like optimism necessarily, either. um she kind of get reaches this, we we were talking about it the other day, but she kind of gets to a place where I don't it's similar to Plath. I think Plath kind of touches this sometimes, gets close, but Louise Glick brings this into sort of full kind of clarity, is like this prophetic voice, which is something that I don't know of any other, female poets that I know of, that I'm aware of, that kind of get to that place. Um, Kind of see from this sort of objective, omniscient point of view, and at least in, the Wild Iris and some other poems from her other collections, sometimes it's kind of looking down on us, or maybe looking down on the reader, or looking down on a uh, someone kind of not knowing, um you know saying like, if only they knew, or I gave them everything they could have wanted, and like from this kind of creator standpoint. And so yeah, to kind of your point, about like grief, and it's a little bit, it can be a little dark, maybe not always gloomy, but it's
Well,
not optimistic
no, I would say it's not optimistic, and you make allusions to her sort of her sort of transcendent voice, or sort of voice
Mhm,
looking down on us. She I would say, as far as her people related to, to maybe like a Sylvia Plath and that, but Sylvia Plath being much more confessional,
mhm,
whereas someone like Glick, she sort of she will become the deity and the one sort of confessing to the deity.
mhm,
In a lot of her poetry, she'll sort of like, I guess you could describe that as being omniscient,
mhm,
as opposed to just confessional. Is sort of assumes that this the confessional poets, they knew that their poetry was something that the audience was reading, whereas Glick's poetry is like you say, is almost something that is imparted upon the reader, almost from on high. Um, so and that is a very interesting voice. I kind of almost it kind of almost smacks a bit of Emily Dickinson for being for how cosmic it can be.
mhm,
Just sort of, maybe not necessarily maybe the voice is just equally like sort of cosmic,
mhm,
but
mhm.
Emily Dickinson sort of is more of herself, I would say, throughout her poetry,
Right,
whereas
right.
Louise Glick is will assume the role of sort of many different individuals. In fact,
Yeah.
one of her books focuses is on her all these different flowers are sort of all these different maybe intimations of transcendence, of spirituality, of
Mhm.
pain and overcoming pain.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wild Irish, she does that, where, she takes on, sort of, some points I think she's kind of herself, or she's the gardener. Sometimes she's, the things in the garden. Sometimes she's God, or I guess the poet, the point of view, the perspective that we're hearing. I don't want to say maybe necessarily her, but that's the point of view that we're reading from. Um, and I wonder sometimes, like Emily Dickinson, Sylvia Plath, like these aren't, we notice this, we read this, and other folks, um, I read that as well, that I read people compare her to those. So it's not like just coming from us. But I wonder if you know, is that, is it just like a lack of reference for many of us? We always go back to Dickinson, to Plath, like there's certain, kind of, does every, so many female writers, I feel like, you almost can say it's like pairing every Asian restaurant I go to has Riesling, on the menu, and it's like it goes well with the food. It really does. Um, and the best restaurants that, Asian restaurants in America, that have great wine menus, like they're heavy on Riesling, especially from Mosel Valley. But or is it so much that it pairs well with the food, or is it we get into this sort of echo chamber in which, oh, okay, I have this Asian cuisine. What am I going to pair it with? Oh, Riesling. I know that goes well. Maybe, but maybe we don't branch out. Maybe you should try Chenin Blanc or Gewürztraminer, But so the same thing with the poets, do we, is it that they all, is it that all female poets remind us of Emily Dickinson, or is it just that maybe and maybe they do. And maybe many of them do, because she is such a sort of a pivotal figure in poetry, and she is inspiring to, to both men and women.
Right,
Um,
right.
I can attest that to myself. She was one of my early favorites.
It is
Yeah.
interesting, and I think that's why it was important for me to, when I brought up Plath and Dickinson, to not only compare but also contrast. You know, I
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
always try to. That's why I always like to. Some people will say like, "Oh, you shouldn't compare these individuals," or but it's not just comparing. There's also, you also have to contrast, and I
Hmm.
try to compare and contrast. People who they've been associated with. Glick's been a sort of associated with Plath,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
Robert Lowell, as far as the
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
confessional poets are concerned. But she's also been compared with Dickinson. But Dick, to further contrast, Dickinson was much more metered.
Hmm.
Much
Hmm.
more.
Right.
Would use sort of older forms, whereas Glick is sort of a lot more free verse. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
but they are similar, and they both have sort of this
hmm.
cosmic sort of perspective. But like I said, Dickinson is much more present in her poetry
Yeah. I
as
think, yeah,
as
yeah.
herself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 I hear that. I hear that. I think part of that too is almost like they both have sort of illusion, that there's this like kind of Christian sort of background, maybe undertone that neither one of them like quite 100% identify with or get
mhm.
behind, but there's almost like this acknowledgement of it. It's like a lot of Dickinson's poems are, in the form of uh, like hymns, and they're often times kind of like allusions to to God, and um similarly with Louise Glick, but it's never quite, you don't look at them and say they're not completely alienated from the religion, but they're not like, these aren't nuns, these aren't like devout women,
This isn't necessarily
at the
like
same times.
Christian poetry,
Right, right, but it but it's there, and I think it, that might, and that probably just speaks to our culture, if you,
right?
if
And I wonder, is
you
that
know
a product of sort of like our education system? I mean,
right,
especially with
yeah, yeah.
Emily Dickinson, I'm sure
Hmm. Hmm.
she was read the Bible
Yeah, yeah.
many different ways, and I'm sure
And
Louise Glick sort of
hmm,
was sort of by osmosis, so to speak, received a lot of sort of Christian overtones just throughout her life in
yeah.
education.
And if you, just as she, like the Triumph of Achilles, she has um books and a lot of poems based on mythology. If you're a student of poetry, and she very much was, she was also a teacher for many years. um you're going to, if you're digging into, older poets, you know, from 16th, 17th century, if you're going to like the best of the best, you're going to William Blake, who writes from that sort of prophetic sort of tone of voice, that I think Blake kind of sometimes, get reaches to. You're going to run into this kind of stuff. You're going to be confronted with, sort of Christian allegories, and, you know, Greek and Roman mythology. If you want to understand the poems, if you want to understand like what like Wordsworth, Longfellow, Tennyson, some of these guys, you're going to be reading. You have to read about mythology too, and also T.S. Eliot, like with The Wasteland,
Right.
we talked about that last time with with him and Pound. you know and I want to say this before we get too far off with the Dickinson and the Plath things. I listened to a podcast, an interview with her, um, with for Yale, and she talked about Plath and Dickinson in that. Dickinson was one of her early favorites. She still had, she was saying, and this is a year before. This is like in 2022, a year before she died. So she's like 79. She's saying like, she's still, she's she knows many of her poems by heart, could like, could still recite them, but now it's just, there's something there that it just it's not she still has respect and like kind of love for it for what it is, but almost like can move beyond Dickinson in a way. But also with Plath, she still had, great regard, uh, sort of held her in high, regard still.
Mm, okay, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I was gonna compare it to myself, I'd say something like I moved past Blink 182, but I still always loved the Pixies.
Mm,
Even
mm.
even if I might not listen to them as much these days.
Yeah, but I hear that too, because like, but I mean, yeah, but you still like appreciate Blink-182 for like what they are,
Right,
what
right,
sort of what they were, classics. You could probably still, I mean, there's a bunch of them. I could probably just,
right.
you know,
Rattle them
you
off.
put it on,
Yeah,
I could probably just, I'd sing along right
yeah.
with
Pick
it,
up the guitar and play the
Yeah,
song.
I've learned how to play First Date on the guitar.
Okay.
Yeah. So, um,
I mean,
pick
but
you up for our very first date.
to be honest, am I like putting on a Blink 182 album and letting it just go, like just letting it run? Maybe every once in a while with my friends having some beers or
Hmm,
something, but
hmm.
by myself or even just it's rare every so often, but
Yeah.
it is much
I don't
it
know if
is
I could
rare.
make it all the way through. I'd probably end up jumping somewhere else. Like I could, I know, because I know I've done it where I've been like, you know what, I'm gonna listen to Take Off Your Pants and Jacket,
Hmm.
and I'll get like a couple songs in, and then I'm,
Right, yeah, yeah.
'cause um,
But
so yeah, yeah.
but a group that I feel the exact same way about, the Pixies. I mean, I still, I don't know. I still will throw on one of their albums, listen to it, rarely, but
Hmm.
I'll probably make it all the way through the Pixies album.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's bands like that for myself as well. I could go through The Strokes, you
Mm.
know. I loved them in high school too, and during a time when I loved Blink-182, but I could still listen to a full Strokes album. I've done it even recently.
Yeah.
You know, I could, so um
There's
yeah,
these
yeah.
foundational acts that you sort of move past, and then there's
Hmm.
sort of foundational acts that you don't quite move past as much.
Right, yeah,
You know,
yeah. And it's not to say that,
and this is not to admonish anyone.
hmm, hmm,
Like no
hmm.
way could we. I'm sure Glick would never admonish Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I, yeah, right. I love Blink-182 too. Real
Oh
quick,
man,
as we're just saying this, I just want to make that absolutely clear.
the amount of I don't have any personally, but the amount of my friends with Blink 182 tattoos is almost
Hmm, hmm.
the amount of people I
Yeah.
know with Blink
Hmm,
182 tattoos
hmm.
is almost
Right,
like, all
yeah,
right, guys, we get
yeah.
it. Like,
And I went and saw them when in
and
their reunion tour.
we were almost 10 years late. Like we were
Yeah,
born kind of
exactly.
in the
We were.
'90s.
Right.
We were late to
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
So
Right.
Blink 182 is
Yeah.
it's something undescribable. However, like I might barely make it through the album.
Yeah. 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 It
I
just it
might
can't,
really just listen to the highlights and just
those guys,
reminisce a bit.
right, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. Those guys really just I think like yeah, when you're in high school, like what can you say? Um they were like the cool kids knew about them. That was like a test,
And it was, back then music was a lot of fun. Music
right? Yeah.
was a lot of fun back then.
If someone liked Blink-182, that was like way up here, and then there's like all these other bands where you could be like,
Right,
oh, but I
right.
like, and they're even like completely sort of different, looking back on it now, but
I mean it's like a family tree because
hmm, hmm,
some kids went like Blink 182, My Chemical Romance,
hmm, hmm.
Fallout Boy.
Yeah, yeah,
Some kids went like Blink 182, Green Day, Rancid, like me.
hmm, hmm.
And
Yeah,
then some
yeah,
kids went kind of like, you could also go kind of like Blink 182, Nirvana, Pearl Jam kind of thing.
hmm,
So
hmm.
there was a lot of different
Yeah.
kind of ways
I
you
think
could go.
I don't know. I
Some
think some of the yeah.
some kids went like Blink 182, like Lil Wayne. Like
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
some kids went like Blink 182, Lil Wayne, like Kanye into hip hop.
Right, right, right. I probably went into like hip hop. I liked hip hop even actually before. But like some of those bands were like Taking Back Sunday and like The Strokes and
Mm,
um but The Strokes is like nowhere near Blink-182. It's just it was the same time period for me.
mm,
I was listening to these at the same time. Um and like Taking Back Sunday and like maybe like Say Anything and like Motion City Soundtrack. Like I love those. Those were
mm-hmm.
bands I really enjoyed at that time, which are yeah.
And I also went like Blink 182 to uh like Descendants, Misfits kind of,
Hmm, hmm.
you
I
know.
did that later. I did that later, going
Mm,
into Descendants, like college. Yeah, I didn't really like heavier punk stuff as much. I think I liked um some of the because I enjoyed Boxcar Racer, but I
mm,
liked and I liked Plus 44, but I liked Angels and Airwaves more than
mm.
any of those uh
Okay,
bands that the other projects that they did.
right. I think I would have maybe at the time. I think I might have would have went Boxcar Racer because didn't Boxcar Racer still have Travis?
They did.
Yeah, so I think I probably would have went
Yeah.
Boxcar
Yeah.
Racer at the time.
Yeah. I like them.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
I mean, like, but Blink 182 springboard to many, many different bands.
yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
and then you can also go sort of like Blink 182 Sublime, Less Than Jake.
Yeah,
You
which
know,
I did that too.
yeah.
That was me like like freshman year of college. It was a lot of like that ska
Oh,
punk stuff. Yeah.
senior. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is about senior year, freshman year of college, where you
Hmm.
can listen to a lot of where those listen to a lot of ska back then.
Yeah. 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 Because I think when I was like maybe when I was a junior in high school, because I was pretty cool, I had the Sublime, 40 ounces of freedom. I had the CD in my car,
Hmm.
So, um, but I never went beyond that. Like it was like the Sublime 40 ounces of freedom. Like I just knew that album had that, and I didn't really go beyond that in the ska realm, like a little bit, but not like too much. Not until my freshman year of college, then I started listening to different bands like Less Than Jake and
Street,
groups like that.
yeah.
Streetlight
Streetlight Manifesto,
Manifesto and um, like Goldfinger, right? And
Real Big Fish.
Real Big Fish, yeah, yeah. So,
So yeah,
yep.
Blink 182 springboard into
Hmm,
many many
hmm.
different sort of bands and genres and
Yeah.
but
And that
is
was the
it
thing between all of those. Like everyone would like Blink-182 and then they would have their own like little niche thing
right
that they liked. So like you could connect with just about anyone with Blink-182.
right?
And then, then you'd find some
You
other
just
common
like
ground in
branch off
between.
from that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, such a fun time, dude. And
Right.
people would have like 4 or 5 branches that they
Hmm,
listened to.
hmm.
You know,
Right. I think I've gone down all of them at this point,
right?
so
Because
um
some of the branches that might have died off a little quicker were like maybe like Blink 182, Corn, System of a Down, Slipknot.
yeah, yeah.
That was kind of
That
a
was
that
one I'd actually, you know what? That was a route I never took. I didn't listen to it. I listened to some of those bands kind of
I did. I like Corn
casually,
and
but
System of a Down.
I don't dislike them, but I don't I didn't listen to them heavy.
So yeah,
But yeah, yeah.
family trees. One and then so Louise Glick. You
Right.
might
Louise
some
Gluck.
people
Right.
obviously go like you know Emily Dickinson, Sylvia Plath, Louise Glick, but those some of those connections may be more and less tenuous depending on who you ask.
Yeah. They're maybe tenuous, but at the same time, the poet herself,
Right. And
recognized it, so it's not like a complete just
it's not a misreading it
fabrication.
in
Yeah.
any sort of the way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
something that something that we've been doing on this podcast is we like to compare, but we also like to contrast. So
Hmm.
it's
Big
not just
contrast, guys. Big contrast.
big in contrast. Well skilled in comparing as well
Mhm.
as contrasting.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 So, and I like to contrast how much I compare how much I like to contrast with, I contrast how much I like to compare with how much I like to contrast. So
Right.
yeah.
That was an apt
But
comparison.
right. Yeah. Well, and let me contrast that conversation, that introductory with we gotta get into some poems. That's also something we do here at Verse Take.
I'm
We
pretty
do
sure you
take a
went first
verse
last time.
and we give a take. I think I went first last time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
say.
I think so.
So I guess I'll go first this time. One into sort of change things up a bit. Let me share my screen. The poem that I chose to do was Elms by
Mm,
Louise Gluck. And gonna get into this poem and gonna read it first, and then we'll talk about it, and then something that I think this is on the fly. Maybe what we'll do is we'll read it, talk about it, and then maybe we'll read it once again on the way out. Maybe
okay.
that'll be a kind of a good kind of change of pace. I was thinking.
You like at the end of like your talk, read it one last time, or like at
Yeah,
the very end of the.
before we go to yours, read
Hmm.
it one
Okay.
last time, just
Okay.
so that they can hear it again on the way out post analysis.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll do Elms by Louise Glick. Okay. All day I tried to distinguish need from desire. Now in the dark, I feel only bitter sadness for us, the builders, the planners of wood, because I have been looking steadily at these elms and seen the process that creates the writhing stationary tree as torment, and I have understood it will make no forms but twisted forms.
Mm,
That was Elms by Louise Glick. And the first thing that I guess I'd like to start off by saying about this poem is I think the key to sort of understanding it or analyzing the poem lines in the first line. All day I tried to distinguish need from desire. Um, you know, so, need and desire. Your need, your wants, your needs. This is something that, in some ways, we spend a lot of time, thinking about. As people, go doing this and doing that. Uh, as we sort of go through our lives. But the interesting thing is when the poet says now in the dark, it's almost like in the dark they sort of come to this realization, which is sort of opposite, because usually you would think a realization is often characterized by a light bulb, but now
right.
in the
Yeah,
dark
that's smart.
there's
Yeah.
sort of this realization, or there's sort of this acknowledgement of feelings of sort of like a longing, a sadness
Hmm.
for people who are characterized as builders, planners of wood,
Yep.
those that
Yeah.
those that sort of take these these uh sort of processed pieces of tree and attempt to plan with them and attempt to build or construct something out of the processed bits of trees. Yet the actual elm trees themselves, with the elms, which are actually trees themselves, they're writhing, yet stationary, not going anywhere, but they're writhing in torment. Like in the place they are, they're full of torment and writhing, and this torment, this suffering, it'll make twisted forms. It's almost like no matter what we intend, it's almost sort of like the best laid plans of mice and men sort of thing.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
Um,
if I can kind of
Go
butt
ahead.
in here real quick, I think so that should be it's planers of wood. Because planer would be two ends, and a planer is like that machine that cuts wood into a uniform length, width, and piece. That like creates the board.
Okay. I guess that would be a planer of wood.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You
oh,
create a plane like a
Mm,
flat plane, which I mean, it goes to your, it's still,
right,
the planner, idea is
right,
still, they are planning with it. And I think that's also kind of to the point too. It's like, it is like the best laid plans of mice and men, because, you're trying to create this, a flat, uniform,
right. A flat
object.
uniform
Yeah,
board or a flat
right.
uniform
Out of
object.
something that is not that, out of something that is crooked. And, we're trying to bring, out of chaos, bring, uniformity and order,
Mm, right, right. Yeah, exactly. So the that kind of does go to the whole the best laid plans of mice and men kind of point.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you know um it's interesting at the beginning. It's like all day, throughout the day during the
Hmm.
daylight, the poet has been trying to distinguish need from desire.
Yeah, yeah.
But now in the dark, the poet is feeling sad for us, the
Hmm.
people who are attempting to do these things, because she's been looking steadily at the elms,
Hmm.
and it's sort of like the steadily looking at the elms and the way they sort of writhe and twist in the torment of life, yet they don't move. That sort of oxymoron of writhing yet stationary.
Hmm. Hmm.
That by steadily observing that oxymoron, she has been able to sort of arrive at a conclusion that she was trying to distinguish
Hmm. Hmm.
earlier in the poem.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah. We kind of go back to the beginning. Um, it is interesting that that idea, like trying to distinguish, like she's been trying to like kind of parse out between,
right,
need from desire. And, you know, um, kind of this yeah, kind of, you think of, even with in religion, in Christianity, you think of like discernment, the
mm,
ability to be able to discern what is right, right and wrong, or discern sin, or some, something like that. And so it's almost like she's been kind of trying to figure out, all day she's been, you know, she tried to distinguish need from desire, and she's, you know, also, from there too, like looking, I've been looking steadily at the elms. It's almost, like these are like an object of meditation almost, and she's just
mm,
been, there's no action, but just like looking, she's been observing them. And, seeing the process that creates the writing. It's kind of interesting. Like, now, after observing and meditating on them, I now see the process that creates this writing, because it's like, I'm trying to create, I want flat board so I can build a house, but
right.
why can't I get straight trees? You know?
Mm.
You know, and yeah, the stationary tree is in torment, and could like, maybe the tree itself is understood, it will make no forms but twisted forms, it's almost accepted itself as this twisted thing, that this, the process that, that makes it, you know uh twist to the sky, I guess, is that I guess, because things aren't perfect, right? I guess if everything was perfect, a tree would just go straight up, get all the sun it needs, but
Right.
that's not how things work, so it's gotta twist around to find that sun.
Exactly. And if everything was perfect, she wouldn't be having to spend time trying to distinguish between need and desire.
Right, yeah,
So
yeah.
that so even spending, the time and the energy trying to distinguish those two things is itself a form of writhing torment.
Hmm. Yes, yeah,
That
totally,
is
absolutely.
it that in
It's like a
itself
dark
is a
night of the soul.
right. It is a writhing torment that has sort of twisted her into this form of one
Hmm.
who is
Yeah,
trying to distinguish need from
right,
desire,
yeah.
as
And
opposed to need
yeah.
from desire being apparent.
Right, right. And so it's almost like, she too is, and in some ways you could also say this is this poem is about poems and writing poems, and trying to
Mm,
write poems to like the metronome. We were talking about that with Ezra Pound last week. Um, you know, this is almost like more accepting the poem for what it is instead of trying to create nice, neat, orderly something that is, we can kind of understand and nice and clean. But in fact, life is not that way, because it's life is the process that makes this tree, writhe and twist, and so the poem, writhes and twists because it's coming from the poet who does that as well. And she too is almost, or the poet is almost kind of reaching for the sun, in a way,
Exactly.
maybe of, yeah, this area maybe of contentment.
The son of meaning, the son of
Mhm,
contentment, the son
yeah,
of purpose,
right, yeah, yeah,
the son of
um,
peace,
yes,
the
yeah,
son of
yeah,
peace.
yeah,
Um, and the same way, and I'd like to also point out how the same way the poet spends time studying the elms is how we spend time reading the poem.
hmm yeah, yeah,
So we see
that
the
too,
torment of the poem.
yes, yeah, yeah,
We see the
and yeah,
we see the
hmm
oxymoron and the turn of the poem as we meditate on it, the same way the poet saw the turn and twist of the trees and began to meditate upon those.
hmm hmm
And so it will make no forms but twisted forms. It brings to mind our own twisted selves.
yeah,
The torment of the world will make no form but twisted forms.
yeah,
Sort of a very cosmic voice. If we
hmm
want to take it to
hmm
the cosmic place, well, without further ado, it's interesting how you brought up Christianity earlier. I kind of see Garden of Eden
hmm
overtones in
hmm
this.
hmm hmm
It's almost like thanks to the snake, now we have to spend our time trying to sort of distinguish need from desire, and the conclusion we arrive at is torment or suffering. Like I kind of hinted at the Buddha earlier. Our life is suffering, as the Buddha is intimated. And this poem also intimates, it doesn't use the word suffering, it uses the word torment. Um, but the meditating upon the elm trees kind of reminds me of the snake in the desert with the Israelites. How the snakes were biting them and attacking the Israelites in the desert, yet God told Moses, I believe it was, to raise the stake with the snake on it,
hmm
which is basically like a writhing, twisting tree in this poem, but is some sort of writhing, twisting staff in the biblical story, and insisting the Israelites meditate upon the staff with the snake around it, and that would stop the other snakes from biting them. So acknowledging that life in our life is dependent upon something that is not quite neat, and not
yeah,
quite steady and organized. It humbles us, and it kind
hmm
of
hmm
maybe brings a solace within us that we won't be able to arrive at with the rational mind.
hmm hmm yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, that's
Louise Glick packed a lot
yeah,
in there, and
yeah,
it's sort
no,
of um, those are sort of Christian overtones. The rational mind will not be in. It's almost there's Christian and Buddhist, and I guess there's almost sort of axial overtones in this in the poem, in the
hmm
writing, and in our culture as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I would say even, using the word sort of torment and using the words writhing and torment, those are even sort of kind of more biblical terms. I mean, you see them in, popular culture, but, when we describe, sort of pain and suffering, um, in the Bible, it's described as, torment, writhing. If only she had, thrown in gnashing of teeth, then
Mm-hmm.
then it would, it'd
Right,
be all
right.
apparent. But um,
And that
so
is
yeah.
in the writhing is it's reminiscent of the snake, the serpent. The serpent sort of writhes,
Yes,
and
yeah, yep.
the serpent sort of is this creature of agony. When you
Mhm,
grab the
mhm,
serpent, it sort of writhes and
mhm,
twists, and
mhm, mhm.
it's
Yeah, and so yeah, sorry, but maybe, that process of writhing too, because that's what the snake was, um, that was, his punishment was to, you'd have to writhe,
along the
on the
ground.
yeah, and so, it's almost like this process that creates the torment, maybe because the tree is stationary, but it's striving to sort of reach something. It is almost like this, like because there is sin, or there is like,
Mm,
that's like there is like this, or evil in the world, or there is this kind of, it's like a fallen place, because things aren't perfect. This is the process, there it almost this give and take process.
right.
um because it's not all bad, or the trees would be dead, right?
Exactly.
They would be on the ground. We aren't looking at a fallen tree, we're looking at trees that are standing up.
And not to get too theological, but sort of the oxymoron of the writhing yet stationary tree is sort of the it kind of goes into the idea that you know man reaching for the fruit is a bit of an oxymoron, or the snake talking to the woman is like an oxymoron. It's sort of a reverse. It's sort of something that's incongruent. It's not the proper order of things. So
Mhm.
um the writhing, the stationary tree, the tree being writhing yet stationary, the oxymoron is appropriate because now it is in a state of torment.
Yeah.
Just as in a sense, this for the snake to speak to Adam and Eve, and for Adam and Eve to reach for the fruit, is that is torment. They may not have necessarily felt the sting right then and there, but
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
was a state of chaos, torment,
Right, right. Well,
suffering.
yeah. We also, kind of, oftentimes, we think of sin as being, like in sort of our vaguely today Christian culture, we have this, feelings of like, even if you don't necessarily relate this to religion or to Christianity, or you think about about think about it from like sort of a rational, psychological, scientific mindset of, you have like these desires. We kind of often, either sin, or the desire, the want, is kind of associated with more or less being, kind of being bad, right? And so,
Mhm.
at the beginning, that's what the poet is trying to do, is distinguish between need and desire. And it's, kind of interesting, thinking like, you know, is it even, why is it necessary that, we have uh planes of wood, you know? Why is it necessary, is it even, is it a need? Is it a desire to have these straight pieces of wood to build with? When we see that, things in nature aren't necessarily made, uniformly, or the things that stand in nature aren't necessarily uh maybe symmetrical, or
Mm,
like how we don't find these sort of geometric shapes like in nature per se.
right.
um, there might be there kind of like underlying, but
Hmm.
it never, you're not gonna like just find like a perfect cube. I don't know of any like perfect cubes,
Right.
natural
Right.
perfect cubes. There might be one, and I'm unaware of it, but um
Right. And hey, trying to distinguish that need from desire is almost like, it's almost like, trying to sort of, you know, because in some ways we do, it's almost like we need to build, or we need to sort of manufacture things. We have a need to build, a need to manufacture things, but is it is we but we have a desire to sort of, hold things to maybe this sort of aesthetic place, or keeping nature out, or it's almost like separating the wheat from the chaff, or it's almost like a constant battle,
mhm, mhm,
to sort of keep nature back and
mhm,
sort
right.
of keep nature out. And maybe there's something by planing this wood and building, by establishing these geometric shapes, maybe we sort of hope for there to be an idealism within ourselves, a
Mhm,
place in
mhm,
ourselves where there's, corners and straight lines as opposed
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
writhing, twisting, because maybe
Yeah.
that's why the snake had to be contrasted against the staff. You
Right.
know,
Right. And this actually, yeah, this actually is reminding me of our talk with about Tracy K. Smith,
mm,
and like with the science fiction, uh,
mm,
and talking about, because it's almost like we're kind of we're trying to, almost by creating like this, we live inside a box, we create this geometric space,
mm,
and which is nice and orderly, and then so everything inside that geometric space is nice and orderly, right? And
right.
it's everything that's outside that is
Twisting and
right,
wretched and
right, yeah. And it's almost, it's like reminding me of, like, is it the Lord's Prayer again, like asking for
mm,
the,
heaven.
yeah, this heavenly orderliness that we
Right,
see up in the stars, like here. So we create these geometric, uh, boxes that we live in, and we're on a grid, in our little city, and we
right.
try to make it all nice and neat, almost
But
like bees in a in a hive or something.
but that right. But it's like the poet does not read. The poet does. You almost have to. So the poet transcends that by almost
Hmm.
realizing that life makes twisted forms.
Right,
Like
right.
even if the planes of wood that we make and we build with, even if that does speak to something higher within myself,
Hmm.
the fact
Hmm.
that within that physical orderliness I
Hmm.
spend time tossing back and forth between need and desire
Hmm.
shows that my form is in still some way twisted.
Yeah, yeah. There, yeah, you have understood it will make no forms but twisted forms. There is almost like yeah, maybe that there is maybe a level of understanding, maybe a resolution. Maybe it's like, I guess I see that change is the only constant, Uh,
Or that
um,
life truly is suffering.
right, yeah, or the
And
acceptance that chaos prevails. I don't,
mm,
I
or
cannot,
chaos is present.
yeah, or present, right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, maybe that is because, you see the process that creates the writhing, like we're saying, like, it is that kind of like maybe sin or fallen state, or, there's just evil, there's bad, um,
But the poet
yeah.
feels sad for us, the builders and planers,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
because
Because
we
we're
spend time.
striving against it. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
Yet it will make no form but twisted form, even if that form is intangible, because the
Mm,
poet's twisted form is intangible.
yeah. Well, and maybe too, because our buildings don't last forever. They do fall down,
Right.
and sometimes we build them maybe sometimes from just building them poorly, and sometimes just from time, because we're not able to make things that can last. We're unable. To my knowledge, we don't have anything that we've created that will never be destroyed. I don't know. Is there, I don't know if there's something that we have. There very well could be. I'd love for someone to tell me what we've made that will never go away, but
The love
you know,
and friends we made along the way.
there we go. Um, and even that is intangible,
Right.
and
True.
so,
True.
um, yeah, there's this sadness because like they're striving against it, and also maybe that in it of itself, that is a twisted form, you know,
Mm,
could because it ultimately, the house falls down, the
right.
bridge collapses, the road crumbles. Um,
And maybe the day is all of our efforts and the things we try to do, but in the dark is who we are on the inside that we,
yeah, yeah, and it could be day is life and dark is death. After,
mm,
now in the dark, post death, this place of all knowing. Now that I'm back with everything, I look back and feel sadness for all of them
mm.
striving, trying so hard to do something that they'll never quite have,
And I also find it interesting how during the day the poet is trying to distinguish need from this desire. At night they feel the bitterness, but then they also have been looking steadily at these elms. Is that over the course of their life? Is there something they've been observing over the course
perhaps.
of their life, or
Right. Yeah.
what? What is the time scale for the
Right.
observations of these elms?
Right. Yeah.
Is
We don't know.
someone just
Right.
observing the elm in a cosmic place? You know, I mean, is the elm almost like that fountain the Grateful Dead sing
Hmm.
about or something? You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm. Yeah. Or like, like this is like, that you think of like, like a lumberjack or someone who's out in the woods. They've been cutting down trees, they've been trying
right,
to, plane them, and they've been around the trees,
right,
they've been observing the trees, and they just notice,
soaking them in,
right, yeah, yeah, over time, um,
right.
maybe years of, cutting these trees and making them flat, and just noticing I have not yet found one that was, the way that I wanted it to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know
Or,
what? I real. Oh,
yeah.
pardon
And
me.
I may think that it's the way I need it to be. I need these
Mm-hmm.
trees to be flat and straight. And,
Right.
and it's like that, maybe that's the distinguishing
That
between,
heaven on earth.
yeah.
Bring that orderliness to earth.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I like this poem a lot. Thank Miss thank Glick for giving this to us. There's a lot of opportunity for analysis here.
Hmm.
It's always
Hmm.
great, when I mean, it's always great when a poet like uses sort of these biblical or sort of mythological
Hmm.
sort of
Hmm.
because the cosmology, it's a
Hmm.
cosmology, like the way the use of like night and day,
Metaphysics,
yeah,
yeah.
using these metaphysics, using these
Hmm.
sort of this shorthand
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
sort of give us a sandbox to sort of play in a little bit.
Right.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, we too are we are trying to have understanding.
right,
We want understanding. We want, please make this something that I can, sort of
right.
I can easily understand. And so yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's one of the, the great things about poetry, or, art, that can kind of distill sort of,
Did,
whether it's
didn't
spiritual or
someone say?
psychological. Yeah.
Didn't someone say? True art is in like art. The art is in the juxtaposition or something like that, or like poetry is in the
Yeah.
dichotomy. I could be
Somewhat,
botching it,
I feel like that does sound somewhat familiar. I'm sure someone in the comments can let us know. Uh,
but the
yeah,
poetry is in the all day, now in the
yeah,
dark. It's
hmm.
that juxtaposition,
Right, right,
writhing yet stationary.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, hey,
Cool. Well,
good
hey,
poem.
are you gonna read that? You want to read it one last time,
Yep.
like you were
How
saying?
could I forget my own thing? I knew that would happen. That's why I mentioned it because I knew you'd be there to remind me. So now we're gonna read the poem once more. Elms by Louise Gluck. All day I tried to distinguish need from desire. Now, in the dark, I feel only bitter sadness for us, the builders, the planers of wood, because I have been looking steadily at these elms and seen the process that creates the writhing, stationary tree is torment, and have understood it will make no forms but twisted forms.
And that's the last time we'll read it. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
That is a good one. Um, almost as good as
Elms by
mine.
Louise Glick. Well, they're the same author,
What
so
what um what one did that come from? Is that in
the
which one?
only the only one I saw was in the four books together. The one but that's not that was
It's
done later.
yeah,
I don't know which one it originally appeared in, but
yeah.
I
That's
know
how I was like,
it
where?
was in
Which one did that one come in? Is it
the first four book of poems by Louise Glick that
mm,
came out in like I
mm.
think that came out in like 1995, but it's a
Oh, okay, got it.
compilation of her first
Mm,
four books. So I
oh,
don't know
okay.
which book it was originally in,
Mm,
but it
hmm.
was in
Yeah,
It
I
wasn't for
wonder,
that compilation.
yeah, I wonder if that also has just like a miscellaneous, you know, collected poems or selected poems from like the same time period. And
It
that could
may.
be, 'cause I've seen that in, I have like two books that have that where it's like they have like a couple book, like my Robert Frost book has like
Mm,
his first three books in it, and then it has a miscellaneous early poems section.
mm, okay.
Um,
It,
so I'm
that
curious if
could
it
be.
if you can't find anything beyond that, I wonder if that's the case.
Mm, yeah, that could be. That could definitely be. But
But yeah, I too have a poem, and it's called the Jacob's Ladder. So talking about, we'll get to that, but more, sort of vaguely, just not vaguely. I mean, it's comes from the Bible, so I guess you could just say it's not maybe not just Christian, but also, Jacob is a character in is in any of the Abrahamic religions. So, um, you know, anyways, let's just get into the poem. So, the Jacob's Ladder by Louise Gluck. Trapped in the earth, wouldn't you too want to go to heaven? I live in a lady's garden. Forgive me, lady. Longing has taken my grace. I am not what you wanted, but as men and women seem to desire each other, I too desire knowledge of paradise. And now your grief, a naked stem reaching the porch window. And at the end, what? A small blue flower like a star, never to leave the world. Is this not what your tears mean?
mm,
So,
and I think
yeah.
not before we go too far, I think we may have missed a line where it says "Forgive me, lady." After that,
Oh, did I? Oh, okay. Are you able
let's
to fix that?
let me
Oh,
see.
I'm.
Hold on.
Oh, no, no. See, in a lady's garden, forgive me, lady. Oh, right after that, longing has taken my grace. I am. I get. Sorry, folks. I typed this out
It's
and
okay. Let me see.
I skipped a line.
Hold on. And but no, we
Yeah,
uh
thank you, because I'm reading from my book here.
wait, we'll get into
Well, I could,
um
I could,
well
I
no,
have it saved, and I could send it to you real quick.
we will get it right here. We'll just share it from the Google Images real quick. But
Yeah, I can see why. I know. Now you can see why I typed it up, folks.
yeah.
But as men and women, yep. So forgive
But
me, lady. Longing
yeah.
has taken my grace. Yep. So yes. But this poem here, The Jacob's Ladder, as I was kind of starting to say before I read it, Jacob is um, Israel. That is his
Right.
name. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story in Genesis, Jacob is one of Isaac is the son of Abraham. Um, Isaac has two sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob, meaning like heel grabber.
Mm,
They're like twins essentially, and I mean, not they were twins, and
yeah.
so Esau was actually technically the firstborn, but you know, as he was coming out of the womb, his brother Jacob had a hold of his of his foot, which is sort of symbolic for how their life and the relationship actually played out between the two brothers. And why this is important for Jacob's ladder is, Jacob, by hook or by crook, I'm, I'm going to give a short paraphrase version of the story just because we don't need to go into the whole thing. But he essentially, took his brother's birthright by, um, through, sort of manipulation and through, kind of trickery. He's a dishonest person, in his early life, Jacob was. And, but like many characters in the Bible, that does not mean that he wasn't, favored by God, right? And so um, he is fleeing his brother. He has gotten initially got the birthright from and blessing from his father by trickery, and then he actually received it from his father. He was favored by his mother, and he was fl- being sent away to marry his cousin, essentially, his Laban. Was the name of the man, and that's where he gets his two wives. But on his path to his uncle, he um he lays down. He's kind of in this place where he's fleeing his past life. Jacob isn't in necessarily a good place in his life at the moment. He's fleeing his brother because his brother's angry with him, and he fears for his life. Later he's forgiven, but um he lays down, and he has just a stone for his pillow, and so he has nothing, right? And he has a dream, and in his dream he sees a vision of maybe a ladder or a staircase, stairway to heaven,
Mhm.
and he sees angels ascending and descending on it. And it's sort of his aha moment, his kind of moment of saying like, I see the Lord must be in this place. He calls it Bethel, right? House, house of God. And obviously that comes into play later with Bethlehem, and you see that all over the place. Church of Bethel, that's
Mhm.
where that comes from. So with that, that is what Jacob's ladder is, right? Is seeing, the Jacob's ladder is this his vision of the angels ascending and descending, and it kind of it sort of gives, it's almost like he saw some kind of you know he saw he had a peek behind the curtains of, we're talking about metaphysics of cosmology, essentially, how the universe works, right?
Right, right.
And and so with this poem, you know as we were talking about earlier, Glick takes on uh perspectives of many. It's not always just from a singular perspective. So this is the perspective of from in my point of view, of a flower,
Mhm.
one of the plants in the garden, right?
Right.
And she even says, I live in a lady's garden, right? Yeah. And so, you know, right in the beginning lines, trapped in the earth, right? We think of
Mhm.
sort of Christian sort of, mythology, and sort of I guess poetics, the earth, like this is sort of the material realm that we're in. We're all kind of trapped here, right? And this is
Right.
where we're kind of stuck on a lower,
The
we
mortal
talk about like,
coil.
yeah, and we talk about like things that are of the world, or
Mhm.
as sort of being lesser than, right? We're talking about the material being a world of chaos. We're asking for order, God's order on it. So you know think of a plant, even in the ground before it before it blooms, right?
Mhm.
And the wild iris speaks to that, the poem itself. um and so trapped in the earth, wouldn't you too want to go to heaven? And heaven,
Mhm.
even just the sky, right?
Right.
Wouldn't you too? Being trapped in the earth, I think of a seed. It has ground. It's in the ground. It is trapped. It's surrounded by dirt, by earth. It wants to get out and bloom into the air, right? Yeah,
Right.
there's a hope there. There's a desire, that we can kind of it's sort of being personified here. But I live in a lady's garden, and we talk about gardens, Garden of Eden, maybe a place
Mhm.
of orderliness, and that's what separates a garden from just the woods or a
Right.
field of flowers. There is intention there. Things have been planted on purpose. Things have
Right.
been placed. It's in a defined area, right? This is, I live in a lady's garden. In some ways, maybe it's an unnatural state in a way,
Mm. Right.
I live in a lady's garden. Forgive me, lady. And with the semicolon, this line, forgive me, lady. Longing has taken my grace. That sentence could say,
Mm.
longing has taken my grace. Forgive me, lady. Right? But
Mm.
this, forgive me, lady. Longing has taken my grace. Think about, kind of that longing we're talking about, this
My
desire,
desire
this
to go to heaven.
ambition.
Right.
Yeah, it's taken my grace.
Right.
And even in Christianity we talk about that too, or in Christianity that's talked about as well, where like desire, ambition, these things can kind of mar you. They can kind of, they can, sort of, because grace, like this plant, it doesn't have to desire to go to heaven. It's going
Mm.
to bloom, right?
Right.
It's going to bloom eventually if it just allows itself to, right? But and I guess you could say it's by grace, right? And so this um because of its desire, it's sort of taken its grace, and grace can also mean to, like, being like graceful, sort of an eloquence, right? It's kind of made it
Mm.
ugly a little, you know.
Right.
It's, um, and so, I am not what you wanted, right?
Mm.
And that line there, longing has taken my grace. I am not what you wanted, you know. That not it's not, there's desire by the lady as well, right? There's almost competing desires. There's desire by
Right.
from the gardener who places, you think of maybe even a failed garden, right?
Mm.
Um, a failed garden, because sometimes if you ever garden, you plant things, not everything comes up every year, you
Right.
know, or certain things they don't come up, or maybe you plant something in the wrong spot. You don't give one plant enough, that you don't give, you don't plant something where it's getting enough sun, or maybe it overgrows and takes over the plants next to it. So there's a bit of chance there sometimes. And things that you desire don't always come to be, just as we are talking in your poem as well.
Mm-hmm.
But as men and women seem to desire each other, I think that's kind of interesting. Like, men and women
Right.
seem to desire each other, right? I too desire knowledge of paradise. Um, it's like, talking about the Garden of Eden, right? The lady had her Garden of Eden, right? She tried to
Mm.
plant her Garden of Eden. This plant lives in that Garden of Eden. It too wants to be in paradise, right? Just as,
Right.
wouldn't you too want to go to heaven? You know?
Right.
Yeah, we all want the same thing here. And now your grief, a naked stem reaching the porch window, you know? Like a naked stem reaching the porch window. I mean,
Not
she
even
can
no
see.
leaves.
Right, yeah, she can. You can see it from in the house, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, like, it's a reminder, this
Right.
naked stem reaching the porch window, it can be in view, almost maybe a reminder of failure, something that didn't quite bloom. And this could be a life. This could be maybe a child.
Right.
Maybe the garden is a child, and maybe it didn't quite live up, right? And the child says, Don't you think I would have wanted to be what you wanted me to be? Don't you think I
Mm-hmm.
too would have wanted paradise? Um, and so, and at the end, what? At the end of it, what? What do you get? When you're planting this garden,
Right.
you know, everything you plant in the garden is gonna die. At the end, you have winter, and you
Right.
just do it again, right? A small blue flower like a star, and I looked it up because I thought of, when I read that small blue flower, I thought of Robert Frost's um, poem, "A Late Walk,"
Mm-hmm.
and he talks about bringing the last blue aster flower to you. Um, you know, I I end. not far from my going forth by picking the faded blue of the last remaining aster flower to carry again to you. Um, I
Mm,
looked there, I looked up like what blue flower meaning, blue, what is this blue flower like a star? Because I thought, the aster flower it is blue and it does kind of look like a star. It's kind of almost like a star, like a firework.
mm,
And, you know, blue flowers, actually, especially like in German Romanticism, came to symbolize like contentment, um, almost like a place of like heaven, peace, tranquility. Um, and so, and that, what do we at the end? Yeah, there you go. Yep, blue aster flower. Um, what do you have? What do you have at the end? Heaven, right? Is it a tranquil blue flower? You know,
mm.
and that's kind of what we picture heaven as peace, right? No, but then we have this, you're never to leave the world. Is this not what your tears mean? It kind of reminds me of your poem with the elms too. Like, is there, maybe there's a realization, maybe there's a just as in the dark, it realized that it would understood, that they realized that, it would create only twisted forms, no forms but twisted forms. Is this what the tears mean at the end? Is that, you never to leave the world? Like even when the flower blooms and reaches for heaven, it still has the roots underground.
Right.
Um, so yeah, yeah. What do you think? What do you take from this poem?
I think so. I think there is something to that. Like like I said at the top, that like I was getting a lot of Buddhist vibes from
Mm-hmm,
Louise Glick. The way that Buddhism sort of acknowledges suffering and just sort of
hmm
says that suffering, incompleteness, being unfulfilled, things being unsatisfactory, that is what life is.
hmm
Like life is unsatisfaction.
Yeah.
So it's almost like there's a striving against it.
hmm
There's the sort of lament against it. This is sort of a lament against maybe the unsatisfactoriness of life or falling short of an ideal. Forgive me, lady. you know Longing has taken my grace. um it's almost like in the poem we did with Ezra Pound. We had the line, the poem I did last week with Pounded. We had the line, the rose leaves die for their grieving, because they are grieving they died. Almost like they're grieving their
Yes. Yeah.
mortality, grieving
hmm
sort of themselves as being mortal. So
hmm
again, we're at
hmm
this idea of mortality almost being its own grief, being
hmm
fallen,
hmm
being sort of
hmm
away from God. And the flower is sort of lamenting, like, look, I all this I did, my desiring of paradise, what has it gotten us? A
Right.
small blue
Right.
flower. What am I? I'm a flower.
Right.
I'm just a small blue flower.
hmm hmm
Like a star, never to leave the world.
hmm
Is this not
hmm
what your tears mean? Is your tears mean the best intentions, the high hopes,
hmm
the aspirations, only
Right.
to continue to be material, continue to be
Yeah.
fallible, continue to be mortal,
hmm
and
hmm
and
Yeah. Well,
continue to
there's
be
also,
trapped
yeah.
in the earth.
hmm hmm Right. Yeah. Yeah, because in like the garden, the flower, like, what does this bring to you? The blue flower brings peace, tranquility. Isn't that what you desire for heaven as well? It's just to have peace, tranquility. Isn't
Mm,
it at the end, isn't this all it is? You know? And you have this striving, this ambition. Um, and I think that's where, this striving, this ambition, why it relates to the Jacob's ladder, right? Because in this moment, he sees kind of how it all is, these angels ascending and descending, from heaven down to earth, sort of going, kind of going up and down this ladder. And, Jacob, he's ambitious, right? He's the heel grabber,
Right.
he's the one, he the birthright of his brother wasn't his, he wanted it. He went and got it. He took it just like he does, and he does that with both of his wives. Um, and it's actually funny too because it's Rachel and Leah, and Leah is sort of the ugly duckling, and his uncle Laban, he pulls the wool over Jacob's eyes. He gets him, apparently blind drunk on the after his first 7 years of labor, and he thinks he's marrying Rachel. And but no, he goes to bed with Leah, and then Laban's like, look, yeah, I mean, I guess he
Yeah.
can do another. I mean, you married Leah last night. I don't know what you were thinking. You took Leah. You think I'm gonna give you Rachel after you took Leah to bed? You, he's like, you gotta give me 7 more years, So, and and hey, that number seven. Did he give him seven? Was it 7 years? Maybe, maybe not. Was it 7 days? Maybe, maybe not. That seven is a number of completion. Completion of, and at the end of all your striving and longing, what did you get, Jacob? Um, the same
what
with,
what
yeah,
was it?
what was it that he got?
Yeah, like no,
Yeah,
I'm saying like what, like like in the context, like what was it? What was so you know in the end, like what did you
yeah, I mean,
you know?
yeah, I mean, it's like in the end, I guess in the end, he gets what he wants, and he got what he wanted anyways. He got his father's blessing in the end. He didn't have to steal it, the final time.
Mm,
He received his brother's forgiveness. Um, it's almost, I don't know, I guess maybe it is a story of sort of grace in a way. And, uh, perhaps those angels ascending and descending, um, is it of their own will or volition that they do so? I'm not
mm,
sure. The same with this flower. It's it's longing, there's want and there's desire on on all ends, and
right.
we're left with sort of grief.
I think that I like I said earlier, I think that's a very Buddhist sort of or at least the first of the noble truths. I feel like the poet sort of can understand the first of the noble truths, and maybe more, but just what we've been evidenced by these poems so far. The fact that life is suffering, which in and of itself is sort of
Right.
there's much fertile ground, so to speak, to kind of cover that in of itself. Because life we have so many different ways and methods, and planes to sort of push back suffering. Or this one is more sort of aspirational. Like when the flower was a seedling, they had almost like these aspirations, these hopes of maybe one day reaching the heavens. But and it's almost a tragedy that they almost have to settle for the plot of the garden or
Right. Yeah.
the porch window. But
hmm hmm Yeah, because it's like trapped in the earth, wouldn't you want to go to heaven? Like this flower, maybe under other normal circumstances, it would bloom, right? And
mm,
that's what it wants to do, you know. But, so it wants to bloom. This lady who has planted the garden, she wants it to bloom, right? But
right,
for some reason, the circumstances, maybe in the planting or, the placement, whatever it is, has kept this flower from blooming. And it's almost, yeah, these like competing sort of desires. It's almost like the ambition of the woman has left this flower longing, and it has taken its took its grace. It lost I don't know. It's like it's lost its grace.
but never to leave the world.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then why do we go to but as men and women seem to desire each other? is this also relationships,
I think it's saying that men and women, what they desire is like a heavenly paradise,
Mm,
but we dress up our desires for paradise as a desire for a wife or a woman or sexual partner or these
yeah,
sorts of
perhaps,
things.
yeah. Well, yeah,
And because I
perhaps.
mean, there is sort of like especially when you get to the into the more Jesus, into the New Testament, there is a sort of God or the head, the kingdom of God is sort of almost something that is has some sort of sexual pertinence, some
Mm.
sort of romantic pertinence.
Yeah, you had that in the Old Testament too with the Song of Solomon.
Yeah,
Or
you
is it
do.
Songs of Solomon or Song of Solomon?
Yeah, Song of
Um,
Song. I think it's songs plural, but
okay, yeah. But
that might be
those are
Song of
from,
Solomon.
yeah, the from newlywed. It's about
Mm,
newlywed and having, desiring the wife of your youth and all that. I mean, that's used in churches to teach about, how sex and marriage is good and great and you should love it and
right.
you know, take pleasure in it. So, um, yeah, that's kind of, which is an interesting thing. Going back to your, sort of that being like to your point about the how it takes on like a sexual sort of tilt in the New Testament, but that kind of being like where you're almost you're connecting with the divine, you're connecting with the beloved,
Mm,
through a lover in a way, which
okay.
you know like the Kama Sutra.
Mm, yeah, and yeah, but then so like I do see it as like there's all, and then there's this idea, especially in our society, of like soulmate, like, oh, my soulmate,
Hmm. Right,
they're
right,
my
yeah.
soulmate. So that's kind of like
Hmm.
men and women sort of
Hmm.
deifying
Yeah,
their
yeah.
partner in a way,
Right, right. Or,
and like,
desiring paradise,
right, desiring paradise, but through, but and some would say maybe that's doomed to fail. If you
Hmm.
deify your
Hmm.
partner,
Right, right. Perhaps.
that's sort of doomed to fail. Like our plant is sort of doomed to fail, and it's
It, it
it,
perhaps also with it reminds me of Ents in J.R.R. Tolkien's I don't remember which book of Lord of the Rings, but the story of the Ents.
mm,
They were, these trees, like the giant trees that are, like that, like they're the walking trees, right?
right,
And so there are only male Ents left. All the male Ents, they liked to move around. They didn't care for like order, where the female Ents, they were very much, they wanted everything to be orderly and so they created these gardens, and they spent all their time creating their gardens and keeping everything nice and neat. And they got to a point where like the female Ents, like they stopped moving and they just became trees.
mm,
Like they became so stuck in their orderliness. And the male Ents, they kept moving, right? And but
right,
it's kind of this sad story of how, now these male Ents, they're just left with like this longing for um and maybe even, maybe this conflicted feeling of maybe they should turn themselves into trees, um and stop moving,
mm,
which they get real close to doing before they're sort of awakened. But it kind of reminds me of that a little bit, because that's a little bit of an allegory of how, they ended up kind of going their separate ways and dividing for a long time. But you think about it with like men and women, how women might, they want nice, neat orderliness.
mm,
They want everything to be, I don't know, taken care of. And I know I'm making, gross over generalizations, and someone will say, no, that's not right, whatever. So
yeah,
okay.
right,
But just in sort of, again, making generalizations, then men, you think of like the cowboy Wild West kind of, not kind of being out, sort of outside of the, you know, polite society.
Mm.
And so I kind of wonder if that, the lady, because it's a lady, it's not a woman, it's not a girl, it's a
Right.
lady. And this, lady, um, of polite societies has created this garden. And what does she have for it? A naked stem. It has not borne fruit.
I was
Yeah.
kind of reading it. Like the stem is naked, but at the end, what? Like at the end of the stem is like a small blue flower. Even it's almost like at the end, what? Just a small blue flower, but also at the end, what? The more general at the end, what? Like what was it all for?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. That's how I read it. I read it that way as well.
A small blue flower like a star, never. That line, like a star, never. It's like a
Right.
star, but it'll
Hmm.
never leave this world. Just like
Yeah.
all of our orderliness, our planing of wood,
Hmm. Hmm.
it is like heaven, but we'll never leave this world.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't want to get too, I don't know, but there's a lot of talk nowadays about aliens, and
Mm.
they're coming doing this and they're doing that, and I don't know. Something tells me as long as we're flesh and blood, never to leave this world. But
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah, people. Right, yeah, or even, interplanetary travel, or, going and living
right.
on Mars or something. Something that is interesting with this poem too, because Louise Glick, it's not structured, meter, rhyme, but there's a lot that you can kind of take from like syntax and the way the lines.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you just like took this line by line and just, there's like many where it's like to heaven I live,
Mm-hmm.
in a lady's garden, forgive me, lady. Um,
Not
the
what you
longing has
wanted,
taken,
but
yeah, right, yeah, not what you wanted, but as men and women seem, just that line, as men and women seem, you know, they to desire each other, I too desire. Yeah, knowledge of paradise and now.
and there's
Yeah,
also something else I'm noticing at the end. Is this not what your tears mean? Like maybe the lady in the garden, maybe the lady is gardening, maybe she's crying,
yeah, right. No,
you know,
absolutely.
and the plant is assuming, oh, is she crying because of my lowliness?
Perhaps.
You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
perhaps.
Like,
Yeah,
is she
yeah.
crying because of my inadequacy? You know, maybe the plant, and that's why the plant asked, Is this not what your tears mean? That
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's almost like the plant may be concerned with how the gardener's feeling, the
Right.
same way we may be concerned with a God's feeling.
Right. Yeah. Am I not what you wanted, Lord?
Right.
Is this why? Is this why there? Things are bad. Or things seem to be
Right.
sad. Um, you know, a, your grief, a naked stem. You know.
Mm.
Um, yeah. It kind of, and maybe this poem does say something definite, but just as maybe your poem does say something definite, right? Maybe we could wrap it up on a bow. But I kind of like that it's just made us kind of question and kind of try to pick apart sort of meanings and say like, oh, is this what this means? Is this could it mean this? Could it be that? Could I
Mm-hmm.
apply this to this situation in life? Can I bring this experience that I had, and does it say anything about the poem? Um, and I think that that's what great poetry should do. And I think that's why Louise Glick gets such credit and acclaim because,
Almost
um,
guru esque praise.
right, yeah, exactly. Because she inspires. I mean, this whole time we've been talking about things beyond, this
Right.
world, and so, and it's because her work has inspired that, and so it makes you consider things transcendent,
It
beyond
takes you to that
yourself,
sort of transcendent point of view.
right? Yeah. Um,
So hey, maybe read it one last
yeah, that's what I was
time.
gonna say. You want me to read it? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sounds like you do, solid.
You said
All
what?
right. I said it sounds like you do. So, um,
Yeah. Okay. Hurry up. I mean,
all right,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
Okay, just let me one for the last time here. Okay, one last time, final. I won't say it again.
Jesus.
Um, the the Jacob's ladder. So trapped in the earth. Wouldn't you too want to go to heaven? I live in a lady's garden. Forgive me, lady. Longing has taken my grace. I am not what you wanted. But as men and women seem to desire each other, I too desire knowledge of paradise. And now your grief, a naked stem reaching the porch window. And at the end, what? A small blue flower like a star? Never to leave this world. Is this not what your tears mean?
Jacob's Ladder by Louise Glick.
Louise. Louise. Jeez, Louise.
You know, one day we should analyze our own poetry and put our
Yeah,
money
we
where our
we have
mouth
we
is.
have discussed we have discussed that. So
Seeing as how we've alluded to the fact that we write poetry.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe we could, maybe we should. Who yeah,
Yeah, we got so much ground to cover though. So many excellent
yeah.
poets.
But I think the way we should do it is I should do one of yours and you should do one of mine. That way,
Okay.
so it's like, because it might be a little bit like, all right, let me explain to you my poem, you know? Here's a poem I'm gonna read for you guys, and I'm gonna go ahead and break it down for you.
I wrote it.
All
Yeah,
right, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
so. And
And so this is what it means.
to be honest, we're gonna have to spend some time trying to getting a list of where we may be kind of coming to the end of our list.
We got a couple more, but yeah, we are gonna have to need to
No, we
add
just
next
have
week.
one. We just have one more in the.
Oh, I thought we had
What
some more people.
we only have one more planned out,
Okay, Keats. Well, that's
which will
something we're
be
gonna have to
next
talk
week.
about.
Next
Yeah,
week will be John Keats.
I think the great thing is there are many poets that we've gone to that we can kind of use as jumping off points, and there are plenty of other. We got a
And
few.
something
We
else
got a
about
few hundred
Louise Glick,
years.
she sort of transcended the whole like she's sort of beyond sort of like modernism, postmodernism kind of. She's
A
you know what I
bit,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah, she was like we didn't it wasn't like there she's almost writing about the human condition in some ways through
yeah,
plants, which
yeah.
she's not the first to
Right, right. No,
use
no, no,
plants to
not at all, not at all. I mean, that's the
allude
thing,
to the human condition.
right? She's contemporary, but you don't necessarily she's contemporary, right? So her poetry is sort of contemporary. The language that she uses, even the forms, the structures, um, those things are contemporary, but the sort of the effect of them is sort of transcendent of time. And I think that many of the poets that we've done, not all of them, but many of them that we've done have had that sort of quality. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why we can read someone like you know, John Keats, who we'll do next week.
Oh no, did we lose Justin? May have lost Justin. How unfortunate. Hey Justin, you there? I'm still recording.
Dude, I'm sorry, but my iPad died. It was at like 3%. I thought I could make it. We were gonna wrap up.
Okay, well we'll just go ahead and wrap up. We'll just wrap up with me going solo and you
Right.
here on the phone.
Hey,
But
give everyone my dearest apologies and regards.
yeah, I give everyone like Justin's completely sorry, guys. His iPad died, but we're here. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up, and we're on Verse Take, and this was Louise Glick. Hey, check her out, guys. This is a great poet, and what we got, Justin. Tell the
Yeah,
people.
no, I think that's I think you said it beautifully. I wish I was there to say it myself. No, Louise Gluck is I'm really glad that that we're doing this sort of in general. It's been a real kind of like education for us. So it's been a lot of fun.
Right. And so, hey, this is Verse Take signing off. We'll catch you guys next week with John Keats. Have a good one.